Okay, we can get started whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this workshop, AI, Data, and Improving Service Delivery. I am the moderator for this session. My name is Amy Holmes from Access Employment, and we've got a wonderful group of presenters ready to share their knowledge and insights on this fascinating topic with you. So I am going to share my screen now, and hopefully my co-presenters will give me a thumbs up if they can see it. Excellent. So thank you very much for attending this session. We hope you've been having a great conference so far, and we're honored that you've chosen to spend this slot with us. And I
Amy,
would like to
we
give
can't
you,
see your presentation yet.
you can't see the
Oh,
presentation?
we can now.
Okay, great. So we would like to give you a little bit of an overview of what the scope of this presentation is going to cover. We would like to explore with you the role that AI and data analytics can play in enhancing service delivery. We'd like to share current examples from and practical applications for the settlement sector, discuss the resources required to realize these kinds of solutions, and to emphasize the value that corporate partners can bring to identify and achieve technology solutions. The format for today's workshop will be an introduction of the presenters. Then each of them will give a brief presentation on a specific topic area related to this, followed by a Q&A. Once we get to the Q&A session, you will be able to write your questions into the virtual hub chat. They will be relayed to us, and I will read them out for everyone to hear, and then we will respond to those questions. If you have a question for a specific presenter, you could include their name. If not, that's fine. We will field them out accordingly. So today on this panel, we have Marco Campana. He's a freelance consultant and the chair of the Settlement Sector and Technology Task Group. Marco has led digital and social media strategy and has created enduring web resources for our sector. Mike Roberts is a practice leader at Newcomp Analytics. He has spent the past 20 years architecting and building business intelligence, data warehouse, and visual analytics solutions for companies across many sectors. Ada Wong is the VP, Marketing, Communications, and Digital Strategy at Access Employment. Through her work, she has led several transformative technology projects and has a passion for bringing digital technology and human services together. Deborah Schwartz leads the Corporate Social Program and Strategy for Accenture in Canada. She works in collaboration with global working groups to drive Accenture's social impact agenda and strategy. And I'm Amy Holmes. I'm the moderator for this session. I'm Director of Online Services at Access Employment, and I work together with Ada on a number of projects to support our organization to use technology effectively in our service delivery. And I'm part of the team implementing Vera, an AI-based chatbot that you will hear about today. I'm going to turn it over to Marco now to cover information about sector digital and informational capacities.
Thanks very much, Amy, and welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. So I want to start very broadly with an overall look at the settlement sector's digital and information capabilities. Service providers are either digitally developing or digitally mature and are developing capacity and competency baselines across the sector constantly. So what you see is a high-level view of the complexity of the context and capabilities the sector is grappling with when looking to become digitally mature. And as we've learned, particularly over the past year, with services moving to digital and remote service delivery models, becoming digital requires a number of overlapping capabilities, literacies, and organizational capacities. And these exist within particular contexts. The most important, perhaps, is the client context. So our clients' literacies, preferences, and capabilities. But we also work within the constraints of a funding context and societal information and communications contexts, which impact our work. For example, misinformation, disinformation. They also impact how and what we communicate within our sector with newcomers and beyond. Next slide, please. If we look at just one area of that capacity framework, ICT or information and communication technologies infrastructure, we still see a lot of moving parts that are important to creating success. This particular ICT framework from an international humanitarian organization called NetHope provides a high-level view of the elements needed to create a strategic digital nonprofit. Technology itself, as you'll see, is only one of many capabilities that must be developed. And data in the bottom left corner, it appears to be just one small but important part of that framework. But when we drill down into the seemingly simple area of data, we see an additional complex set of elements that make up a comprehensive data strategy. This data maturity management model brings us back to a bird's eye view of the important components that make up a data strategy and how they interact with each other. So from data quality to data governance, to building the platforms that we use to input and analyze our data and operations around data. All of these things are complex, and this model has many moving parts. Next slide, please. In this data maturity management model, there are also steps or a continuum that organizations are on, basically from floundering to optimizing data use. And it's fair to say that most sector organizations, and likely most nonprofit and even for-profit organizations, are still very much in the basic and intermediate states. We're still trying to figure this stuff out. In the settlement sector, next slide, please. There have been interesting recent studies and projects done to try to help capture where we're at. And what we're finding is that it's really a sector in flux. Data is seen as essential in carrying out our mission and work, but we have very limited knowledge about data and how to effectively use it among stakeholders, with clients within our organizations. We want to access and use data, but navigating data is cumbersome, as is the communications around that data. And when it comes to open data, for example, data from government, accessibility is changing and has changed over the past few years, but sector literacy about the legal and technical aspects of data is low. And unless you arrive at increasingly accessible data portals with a certain data and technical literacy, the tools are essentially still out of reach. And within organizations, legacy systems are cumbersome. Agencies need support and guidance to either get the most out of them or switch to more user-friendly systems. But building that kind of capacity, while essential, requires investment. There are also tensions in the sector between the sector and its core funder and other funders around how and why data is being collected and how it can or should be used. So for example, data in evaluation can be reactive, responsive to funder accountability, or it can be active to help organizations adapt, develop innovation for healthy organizational improvement, as well as to ensure better interventions for clients. There's still no consensus in our sector on what a meaningful evaluation is, for example, but a sense that we should not just be doing evaluation for evaluation's sake, but how can we make better use of evaluation results? So some of these tensions boil down to a monitoring agenda from the funder versus a learning agenda from organizations, a funder theory of change that is different from organizational theories of change, and data that might be useful for policy development versus data that would be useful for organizational and program development. In recent work done by the Settlement Sector and Technology Task Group, we're finding that data stewardship within any model is essential, but we're still lacking. And because we have different funders, we also have different systems that we're inputting data into, and there's little to no interoperability between them. We're more actively moving to data-driven decision-making, but data deserts exist. People are telling us they need the basics. They need to understand how to take data and translate it into action, and that piece is still missing. We also need additional data management related skills, and people are unsure about security, privacy, confidentiality, and information sharing when it comes to data management. Next slide, please. Throughout all of this, what is key is how data can play a role along the newcomer journey, from pre-arrival all the way to citizenship. There are many points in their journey where data can be turned into information that can lead to action, that can actually result in a smoother or more successful settlement journey for a newcomer. The trick is to build interventions that work and make sense along the journey, that are accessible in ways newcomers want them, through technology or other means that they define. Next slide, please. And I don't want to give you the impression that the sector does not have promising data practices. We do. The sector is increasingly working on making better use of data to better understand newcomers, their journeys, and where interventions can have impact. On the screen are just a few that particularly seek to ensure that client data collected is actually used for organizational development, learning, project and program evaluation and shifts, and perhaps most importantly, to ensure that client data collection and analysis lead to successful client outcomes. Some of these are being developed within the sector itself. Some are developed by technology companies for the sector, but all of them are seeking to break us out of our data silos, to better collect data, and to have technology help us analyze and use that data. Next slide, please. And along that continuum, we also see very interesting examples of where data, machine learning, and AI are being incorporated into service interventions through technology, in particular through chatbots in this case. So the chatbots on the screen combine a conversational approach with external data, such as 211 data that's brought in to provide information and referral using machine language and AI so newcomers can access particular information on services. On the left is a Chalmers bot, which provides information about services for people experiencing homelessness. It's conversational, incorporates 211 data, and leads people to services near them. In the middle is the Orientation to Ontario chatbot, created by Costi, that takes an existing shared curriculum about settling in Ontario, combines it with 211 data to provide another channel for newcomers to learn about topics, issues, and services available to them. And on the far side, which you'll learn about later in more detail, is Access's Virtual Employment and Resource Attendant, or VERA, which is an AI-powered chatbot that offers employment and job search support to job seekers in the GTA and around the world. Each of these solutions benefit from taking a data approach to interventions, but they will also benefit from the data they generate as newcomers interact with them to continue learning, building, as well as identifying potential areas for additional support and intervention. To dive more deeply into that, I'd like to pass it over to Mike now, who will provide deeper insight into data, machine learning, and AI.
All right, thank you, Marco. So before we talk about the technology and how it can be used to help people, I'd like to start by recapping how some of the systems have developed over time. It's hard to believe, but IBM Watson was first introduced to the world back in 2010 when it competed on the TV show Jeopardy! So originally, Watson was designed as a kind of question-answering computer and had a very unique ability. It was able to analyze and process natural language, which is abbreviated as NLP, in both written and spoken forms. Many people were amazed by this, and others were kind of alarmed, and others were convinced the robots were about to take over. But everyone paid attention. It was pure marketing genius on the part of IBM. In particular, businesses paid attention because this was indeed something very new. And there started to be a lot of investment in natural language processing and machine learning. Next slide, please. So natural language processing is one of the key enabling technologies that we need to build useful interactive solutions like virtual assistants deployed at Access Employment. But how does it actually work? And how do ordinary businesses, not like IBM, train and deploy solutions that help them meet their objectives? The secret is we're not using traditional programming approaches where we need to define every single rule that handles all the cases. With machine learning, we can just show the computer lots of examples and extract all the rules for us. We can then use these rules in future examples, even ones the computer has never seen before. This is how computers can solve complex problems like handwriting recognition, image recognition, and natural language processing. The challenge with traditional approach is anticipating every situation, and the challenge with machine learning is having lots of training data. So let's take a look at a quick example. Next slide, please. Many people have seen the children's book called Where's Waldo? So let's say we want a computer program capable of identifying Waldo. With the traditional approach, this is going to be a problem because there are thousands of ways that Waldo might appear, and it's very hard to anticipate every single one. The machine learning approach is to find lots of pictures or examples of Waldo and also not Waldo, and then use a machine learning model to build a decision tree, basically a trained model that can recognize Waldo and also not Waldo with a degree of certainty. Machine learning will populate a decision tree that will make decisions based on things like the striped hat, telltale hair, distinctive glasses, etc. So basically the data and the answers will give us all the rules that we need to identify Waldo. So next slide. So once you have all the rules on how to identify Waldo captured in a machine learning model, you can then use the rules in new and never before experienced scenarios and combinations. So let's take a look at the book above, for example. Here we can take our trained machine learning model along with some other software solutions, and if we go to the next slide, the trained model will process language, or in this case, find Waldo with a great degree of confidence. And this is exactly how virtual assistants and NLP work as well. We have machine learning models that contain examples of dialogue, or just like examples of Waldo, and make predictions with a high degree of confidence. So let's go to our next slide, please. In fact, you don't have to train your own models. IBM and many other vendors have published fully trained models capable of many cognitive functions, such as language, speech, vision processing, and data insights. With VERA, we've used models that handle interactive dialogue, language processing, text-to-speech conversion, and intelligent search, as well as a few others. Next slide, please. Now that we have a sense of how natural language and machine learning have developed and what's available, let's think about 3 areas where we can apply these technologies to help people. Organizations like Access and Employment are broadly implementing AI for customer service as a transformative technology. And typically, there are 3 key challenges businesses are trying to address. The first is enabling customers for self-service using conversational AI for both written and spoken natural language. The goal here is to deliver a high-quality automated exchange. For this to happen, we can't rely on chatbots powered by a simple rules engine. We need an enterprise AI virtual assistant like Watson Assistant. So you just not hit a frustrating dead end that they originally didn't, or when the chatbot wasn't really programmed to handle, and rather they can satisfy the customer's requirement. If that does still not satisfy the customer's question and help them complete their tasks, Watson Assistant can pass the conversation over to a live agent, including all the conversation history, so the customer is not frustrated by a dead end and having to start the conversation again. The second use case is assisting our agents by using AI-powered search of text or written images to help them find meaningful and accurate answers to complex questions posed by their customers. And finally, businesses are optimizing contact center behavior using advanced text analytics to gain insights from previously completed calls, emails, and chats to derive how the contact center is performing and ultimately how it can perform better. And this includes what isn't listed to compliance, agent performance, customer sentiment, and sales effectiveness. Next slide, please. So let's go over some key points understanding Watson Assistant. Firstly, what's it doing? It's combining conversational AI, whether it's text or speech, with AI-powered search. Watson can help customers resolve their problems in an automated way, even for complex questions. It's centralizing disparate routes for customers to solve problems as well, including the phone, their computer, or other devices. So we have a single path for all the customers to get their job done, no matter what the channel they prefer, and whether that's digital or voice. So the key is that Watson gets to the root of the customer's question quickly and lets them use a wide range of language inputs. We use AI to train the virtual assistant faster with less data and employ continuous learning. Go to the next slide, please. So here we have a snapshot of how this looks to the user. People can type or speak in natural language. The system can gather information, disambiguate and handle digressions, and provide information or connect the customer with an agent. Through webhooks, we can connect to third-party systems such as Salesforce, NetSuite, or other APIs to access other reference information. We can also save and retrieve information based on an identifier, such as an email or a reference number. Next slide, please. Another key component of the Access Employment solution is Watson Discovery. This is an AI-powered search solution that can help generate and inform smarter experiences. Using Watson Discovery, you can ingest the reference data that your experts and customers need in a variety of formats. You can train Discovery on a small amount of time with no need for technical expertise, and it will understand the structure of your data and allow you to query it to find answers for the most complex business questions. Information that was previously siloed and inaccessible is now searchable and can be used to create smarter, more accurate experiences. And we'll just go to the next slide, please. So how are these technologies helping communities? Firstly, we're able to scale emergency response to share consistent, accurate information. This frees up people from having to distribute common information like hours of operation, events, and schedules on a repetitive basis. We can also translate national guidelines into organizational messages for distribution. As we mentioned, these NLP solutions work with the user's preference of voice or with text and can work in many different languages. So we're going to quickly look at 3 examples. Firstly, we have Children's Healthcare of Atlanta required a solution to help their parents identify when their children were at risk for COVID-19 and when they should seek medical attention. This is important for child welfare as well as for resource management. This Watson Assistant solution was trained and deployed in just a few days of effort, showing how a simple solution that is focused on distributing information can be deployed very quickly. The second example is how Watson Assistant helped Otsego County distribute information to the public. The assistant was able to convey health information, but also information about how do I apply for unemployment benefits to large numbers of people. And finally, we'll take a look at Miami-Dade County. In this case, the organization is focused on helping delivery of meals to elderly citizens. The Watson Assistant solution works 24 hours a day and diverts approximately 3,000 calls per month, freeing up resources to assist the community directly. And next slide, please. I think many people attending the conference today have ideas about processes that would be great to automate. And the question is, what's a good candidate to get started? The question really is, what's going to help people and what do they need to do or find? And also, what are people on your team doing that's repetitive or needs to happen on a 7/24 basis? Traditional logic is that we can succeed at automating processes that are a combination of data-driven, repeatable, and relatively straightforward. Some of the top areas to start are customer care, helping your team find information they need, or analyzing your call center performance over time. We're hoping that some of the examples we've shown today will help you and illustrate how this technology works. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks, Marco. And so I think this brings us to the virtual employment and resource attendant. And what we wanted to contextualize was how our example of Vera and our application of a data strategy and looking at where we can improve our service delivery meets with an AI solution that we've developed. Next slide, please. So a little bit about Access. We're a nonprofit employment services organization in the GTA, and we work with a network of employers serving now close to 40,000 job seekers a year, both online and in person through our locations. And we are looking to ensure that our work helps to create a diverse workforce that reflects the skills of our population. So a bit about the project. What we were looking at was largely service delivery based on in-person interactions. In 2016, almost all of our services at the time were delivered through a visit to a location or a call over the phone. It required a person on the other end of the service. And what we were looking to do at that time was expand our capacity to deliver online, deliver virtually with very limited resources. We received at the time a grant from Accenture. This is our first major grant. And with this, we were able to develop that content and communications and initial platform that allowed us to bring our services online. So this included an online learning hub, a CRM enhancement, so a Salesforce database enhancement, as well as the implementation of several platforms for virtual services, including online webinars, as well as an e-learning platform. And as a result, upon the conclusion of this project, we were able to double the impact that we were able to offer. So 16,000 was our number in 2016, and by 2018, we were serving 34,000. So online service grew our audience and grew our ability to deliver service. At this time, we're looking at our client journey, and what our data was telling us was that we were experiencing a strong amount of interest in our service and a lot of initial interactions. So if you look at our trajectory of client service from step 1 to 5, step 1 being the initial interaction, step 2 when the client has reached an in-program or are in a program registered with our organization. Step 3 is when they're connecting with employers and out there looking for opportunities. Step 4 is once they're successfully employed. And step 5, once they're in the workplace. This is the typical client journey that we see our job seekers moving through. And our data was saying that at step 1, we had a bottleneck. We had a lot of interest, a lot of inquiries. As a result of that really quick growth over 2 years, we have a lot of people asking and waiting for answers. Once they're in step 2 in a program, or step 3, working directly with us to secure work, we have those human resources to dedicate. They are matched with someone one-on-one, and they are well served at that point. At step 4 and step 5, once they're about to leave our service, once again, we have a high number of people with fewer resources to dedicate and serve. So what we were hoping for were the ability to look at a solution that would help us with step 1, that bottleneck, and step 4 and 5 once a client has left our immediate programs and services. And so if we look at kind of a START approach, our resources people-wise are very heavily focused on the 3 and 4 star steps. So step 2 and 3, and the 1 and 2 star steps have high volume but lower staff capacity. And so what we were hoping for was a solution that would bring together what we knew, what we were seeing in traffic, in our data, in the registration process and the bottlenecks, and also maximize our staff time and our staff expertise. And at this point, we were thrilled to be able to secure a second grant from Accenture to develop an AI chatbot solution to address this challenge. Next slide, please. So our solution brings together the IBM Watson Assistant. So this is the AI chatbot that focuses on conversations, questions and answers, providing resources to our job seekers. IBM Watson Discovery, which is an AI search technology. And what this does is it searches and scans and returns based on our existing library of materials, answers, and resources as needed. And also we've integrated these tools with our Salesforce CRM. And I think this is critical for us to have the data and the automation and the tracking on a solution that follows our client from step 1 right through to step 5. And so now we're able to have eyes track, see, refine our performance on delivery from that first immediate interaction online right through into their service, right out once they're in the workforce. And I think this is what is for us the power of the solution. And throughout the process of building Vera, we were very conscious of the fact that we wanted eyes on ultimately how we could improve our service delivery through all of those connection points that Vera would allow. So what we're hoping for at the initial start of the build was, of course, being able to provide those immediate answers to questions. So 24/7 online, what are the quick things that we can give to everyone? And given our pre-arrival and international audience, delivering services 24/7 was a tremendous value for us. And also being able to mediate some of those questions. We heard from some of our staff initially that they were, spending 5 or 6 email exchanges to set up that information that they would need to provide service. And I think Vera, in one step, is able to do that much more efficiently. So that efficient service then comes into play when that information is given, the initial information from the client is received, and we're able to start that service interaction at step 5. So by the time our clients reach our actual staff aren't spending time gathering that information, they're spending time looking at the profile and moving them forward into service really quickly. The learning and job search advice piece was really key for us. I think anyone who's searched anything online has questions about credibility, about answers, about whether or not it's the right answer. And I think Access and our work and our library of materials, our expertise, we're able to demonstrate and use Vera to provide those answers from Access as a reputable source in this area. And then finally, again, the data and BI piece. So the consistency of information we're getting, the ability to mobilize the knowledge that we're gathering at certain points, and also to streamline the service based on this. And I'll add a little bit more to that after. Next slide, please. So the solution in itself, we spent a good amount of time, several months actually, speaking to job seekers, speaking to our staff about their sticking points in service. So what are the areas they could use the most help around? And we found, of course, the provision of information, answering simple questions about our service, program delivery and program information, screening and recommendations was really significant. And in particular on point 4, tying that directly into our Salesforce tracking was really important. So be able to have Vera do that initial intake for us and collect the data about the client, and also recommend a program or service based on that data was a really important screening and streamlining tool for service. Providing that direct registration right into programs that are relevant. And also on the flip side, following up with additional resources after. Finally, the last two pieces around data and the implementation with our existing tools. Salesforce was our existing CRM database, and we were able to integrate Vera directly, but we were also able to integrate the solution directly with our webinar software, our learning management system, as well as our overall website. So being able to have the tool live within our existing IT architecture and our existing environment was really important as well. So here, I think I'm going to share a really quick demo video. Short of us typing through a quick demo, we thought the video might be a neater way to do that. So Amy, I'll turn that to you for a second. Great. And just for the final part of the presentation, we're just going to share a few of our broader lessons learned. So our results and targets, what we were hoping with Vera was to establish and engage an additional 15% of the visitors that we were finding came to our site but immediately left. And I think on top of this, actually, we've seen that there are quite a few of these visitors that have ended up directly in our service or have ended up calling us in different ways. So that engagement online is definitely maximized. Some secondary targets, and these are related to efficiency of service. We were hoping that Vera would be able to register an additional 2,500 workshop participants a year. And this is just an approximate estimate, but that would save 200 plus hours of our manual staff time. So if you can imagine somebody previously having to call into one of our locations, engage a staff person, register in a workshop, which was actually a very common engagement, we're now able to have those who are slightly more digitally advanced go in directly to Vera, search for what they like, and register themselves really easily. We also were hoping to generate an additional 10% of job seeker leads directly online. So this means that for us, that information to serve the client well, the information to recommend the right program and service once they come in, and to have that profile ready for our staff to engage right away was really important. And just estimating an approximate 10% would be 1,300 hours of time a year. Finally, those FAQs, how do we get to location? Do you have parking? where is your location? Those very simple questions, as Mike was sharing in his example, we estimate will probably offset about 10,000 direct phone calls. And I know that it sounds very simple, but one of the things we heard directly from our administration team was the number of inquiries or the amount of time they would spend explaining parking, explaining a location. And even if it's offsetting a very small percent, it will save, over 800 hours of time. And I think what this translates to for us, our bottom line is not saving dollars or saving money. It's saving and maximizing our staff for the right engagements. So using their expertise for employment service as opposed to do some of these things that are just menial tasks. And I think that's the true value of Vera for our organization. And the customization and focus on value add interactions instead of manual administration makes this solution really important for us. Last slide. And so some lessons learned. This was a year-long process for building, as well as prior to that, thanks to the support of Accenture, almost a half a year to a year of conceptualizing the idea, putting together what our challenges were, as well as thinking through how we could solve this issue. And I think what that process really taught us was that technology is also a lens for us to look at our current process with a new eye. And looking at technology with this eye versus human service delivery, we were able to see those repetitive actions. We were able to see where we could add staff value. And I think this was really an important learning process for us. A second point around right-sizing your project and solution. I think what we learned was that the range of technology in terms of budget and scale was significant. And what we actually started with, just to try out our idea, kind of a proof of concept for ourselves, was a free solution that we could test for a very simple return and answer. And we were able to find some open source solutions online that were relatively easy and low scale to implement. They're a great way to get started, and that's the way that we did it. Pilots, multiple iterations, is also, I think, a point that we wanted to share. And this is, I think, looking at a smaller scale project as an opportunity to refine the model, to set up what you need internally to deliver this type of project, and learning from that to move forward to a different iteration. And this agile approach really allowed access to develop and continue to develop. It's Vera's not by any means finished. Continue to develop what we do. And I think technology really allows that, the flexibility in adding in multiple iterations in that agile approach is something really important, and was a lesson that we learned and continue to learn every day as Vera adopts and learns new skills as well, that this is a really good way to build out a technology and service offering. User-centered design. And I think this is just simply keeping, for us, the job seeker in mind, the employer in mind at every step. And the team that worked on Vera was directly tied to the service delivery approach. So what are those trip-up points? What are those aspects of service that cause the most grief? And staying in touch with that, as opposed to what technology can do, is critical. And I think that user-centered design piece, as you continue to build, as you continue to iterate, just keeping that top of mind is significant. And we continuously remind ourselves that new technology might emerge every day, new solutions, new capabilities, but if it doesn't work for our job seeker, if it doesn't work for our user, there is no point in taking that further. A point here around internal capacity. And I think this is something for change management, for an organization of a certain size, having the right team in place to make sure that technology is taken up well, that everyone understands why we're going there, that solutions are maintained well is really important. And Access, I think, does have a team in place. Amy's with that, and our team together, we collaborate really well to ensure that our organization has that ongoing training. But this is something we continue to work on post the development of the project and as we start to introduce new solutions. And then finally, leading with the strategy of your organization, leading with the challenges that you're facing, not leading with technology is something really important. So there's always going to be something out there that you can adopt. But for us, starting with what we were grappling with was the best way to go. And I'm going to turn that over to Deb to share a bit about her support and Accenture's support of our work.
Thanks, Ada, and thanks, Marco, Mike, and Amy. This has been great. I've heard you talk a couple times now, and every time I continue to learn, even as a partner of yours today. And Ada, I don't know about you, but it seems like a lifetime ago when we were dreaming about online services in 2016. And where have we gone from there? And I can tell you that at Accenture, our people are continually asking me, when's the next Access project? Because you're such a tremendous partner, and we learn as much from you as you learn from us. So for those on the phone joining us today, Accenture, in the event you're not familiar with the company, we are a global professional services company. We lead capabilities in cloud, digital, and security. We're in across 40 industries, 120 countries, and we have about, I think it's 535,000 of us around the world. And I'm honored to lead our corporate social responsibility work, as mentioned, for the Canadian practice. And again, I'm here really not to repeat what the experts on the phone have said, but really to make the point that this has been a journey. And we heard it a few times today that robots are not taking over the world. What we've proven here is the ability to use technology to enhance the efficiency at which we're running our organizations. And I think Ada eloquently described that. Using technology, putting humans at the center of the planning process was key. And at Accenture, we have a responsibility, I think all companies do, to leverage technology for good. And when I think back to the first project and digitalizing some of the work that Access does, and then getting in a room with Access in a social innovation workshop to hammer out how might we use technology to further what they're doing, and coming up with helping support their dream of a chatbot experience has been absolutely incredible. You know, today it's just such an incredible time for us to take a look at the pace of which technology is changing our work. And just the fact that all workforce development agencies, people, we need to expand our offerings and think differently about the job search and self-employment and newcomer settlement processes. And in this changing time, I can say that it's just so wonderful to see Access take this to a whole new level. And I think with that, Amy, instead of rambling on about what we've done, in addition to giving a grant and giving experts and working so closely with Access for many, many years, I think we'll just play a video and wrap up the session and go into Q&As after the video. Thanks.
Access Employment is an employment service delivery organization. We're in the community, but we also offer these services online to support people in finding employment. And a lot of the people that we work with actually are newcomers to Canada.
Back in Nigeria, I started my career as an engineer. There was a lot of instability in Nigeria, and I didn't see a future. Not the kind of future I wanted for myself or for my kids. It's hard to abandon everything you know and just relocate to another country.
Canada needs people. We have a lot of shortages across various sectors. The more people we can reach before they come to Canada, online or in person, the more we can connect them to our employers and to good, meaningful jobs.
The moment I started this journey, I joined the Access Employment Program, and it helped me realize it wasn't all about the technical skills I had. It was more about the soft skills and how I communicated that and how I branded myself better and got employers to see me for who I really was.
Accenture's partnered with Access for almost 10 years. They're a wonderful organization that truly align to our core values. We believe Access is a pillar in the Canadian economy.
So Access and Accenture have worked together for quite a long time as partners, really. And not only have they provided us with a generous grant in 2016 to help us really double the number of job seekers that we've been able to serve. And now we recently received a generous grant from Accenture to help us to develop a virtual employment attendant. It will be combining artificial intelligence and chatbot technology that can help our job seekers to access our services more easily online.
My experience with Access Employment has been tremendous. It wasn't just me, it was my wife and I. So when I say it's emotional, it was really emotional for me. And Access Employment was like my guardian angel in my new professional landscape.
So I've been able to see firsthand the impact that Access currently makes, and I'm so excited to see what they'll be able to do as they further digitize their organization, implement a virtual employment attendant, and be able to scale the services that they already deliver so well.
I didn't have any professional network when I landed here. The only network I had was Access. And it makes everything really easy. Life is good. Yeah.
Okay. Did everyone see the video and hear the video there? Okay, good. I just want to make sure it shared the right window and I wasn't just watching on my own. All right, so now we're going to be moving into the Q&A portion. I see that some people have already asked some questions, and I'm really intrigued to hear the answers to these. So, first question is, how does AI, such as Watson, deal with second language speakers? How can it account for unclear questions and communications? Mike, can I ask you to take this one, please?
Sure. So there are a few different categories of machine learning models that you can use, and one of the broadest categories is around language. And there is a language translation function available that can take a chatbot that's been built primarily in English, let's say, allow it to communicate with people in about, I think, 30 different languages at this point. So for general purpose chatbots that are relaying information, these are a great solution. If you have something that's much more precise, maybe that someone is qualifying for a program and there's a lot more very specific questions, you can also build a chatbot in a second language if you wish. And then this works hand in hand with the text-to-speech and speech-to-text machine learning models as well, so that people can do the same thing through the phone if they don't have access to a computer or a mobile device. So those abilities to translate from the speaker's language to the chatbot's language and back apply either to text or to speech itself.
And just maybe a quick add-on to that, a bit of anecdotal experience. I know that Amy and I were right in there training Vera just around phraseology. So, finding different ways to ask the same question, including typos, not including typos, using different styles of asking questions. And overall, we've found that Vera's ability to do this 6 months ago was a lot less, she was a lot less capable, and she's more able to do that now. So that learning aspect is something that we've been able to see work and in play.
And as well, we take a look at the utterances, which is another word for the sentences that people type into Vera on a monthly basis. And so even if we hadn't anticipated a certain phrasing, we can add them if we see patterns.
Right, and the second part of that question was how to account for an unclear question. So when you design an AI solution, you in addition to utterances, which are the things people say, you define intents, which are things that people want to do. So an intent might be, I want help with my resume, for example. And if a user were to type in, I want help, then Vera can disambiguate the response by asking some follow-up questions. Do you want help, with setting up a bank account, or do you want help with the resume, or can provide options to kind of guide people to an intent that can then help them with properly, or hand them off to an agent depending on what the request is. So it can disambiguate, it can gather information and keep it, and that also handle a digression. So if the person is speaking with Vera and Vera's got, say, 3 of the 4 things it needs to know, and they ask a completely unrelated question, where can I park my car? Then Vera can still pick up from that digression and continue to gather the information that Vera needs to help the client.
Thank you. Next question. How is privacy and confidentiality ensured with these AI services? Mike?
Sure. So there is a number of things that you can do. The first is being careful what information you make available to your AI. So, for example, if someone is checking on the status of something using a reference number, an AI could just respond that yes, something has shipped, or no, it hasn't, but doesn't necessarily have to give address information or other personally identifiable information back to the user. And we can secure access to information inside of a chatbot if there is information that you do want to display. Also, behind the scenes, we can ensure that everything is encrypted either through transparent data encryption, or TLS, or other technical ways of ensuring the information isn't intercepted between the chatbot on the back end. So there's a variety of technology solutions, and then there are also some just design decisions that you can make about what you're going to include, what you're going to keep and make available within the chatbot.
Does anyone else want to add on to that? It's pretty specific, huh? All right. Is your bot AODA compliant? Ada?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
So AODA is an Ontario standard, and basically the way it's enforced is through techniques like using highly contrasting fonts of a particular size, having options to have the solution read aloud if someone has low vision, etc. So although it's an Ontario standard, and these tools are typically produced by U.S. entities, there are ways of broadly implementing the requirements to satisfy the ODA requirements. Also, it will depend a little bit on the device that and browser the person is using, and whether it supports particular readers. But to the degree that the browser and device support those standards, yes, you can build with that in mind.
Thank you. Ada, this question's for you. Did you notice any difference in your no-show rate for workshops compared to people who registered digitally through Vera versus those who have had a personal touch with a counselor or a staff person?
I think definitely we do continue to have a stronger attendance once there is a person involved. So direct referral from a person or someone who has talked to someone before will always continue to be higher. However, Access's channels to register online include email, include our website, now also include Vera. And I think the enhancement that we try to do on our Salesforce side, on our Zoom side, to encourage attendance has actually significantly improved our no-show rate. So I think what we're looking at for Vera is the opening up one more channel, direct channel into our service, and then the improvements that we made on the Salesforce registration side were to ensure that they, once they were in there, they had a smoother process. So those two solutions combined helped us to enhance that. And I think during COVID specifically, we've seen that improvement.
Next question. Mike, we'll start with you again. How do you ensure these machines are not racist and inherit our biases?
Yeah, there are some great examples of historically how that actually has happened. One of the famous ones is with a large online retailer that processed all of their historical hiring patterns to build a machine learning model to look for new candidates. And of course, the new model reflected historical biases of the employer and had to be revised. So you have to look at the data that you're using to train a machine learning model, how it's identifying and targeting, what is it actually doing and what did it learn from. And think about that carefully. The solutions like Vera are a little bit different because they're more of a conversational solution, trying to understand the intent of people and responding. So they don't, although the machine learning model handles the natural language processing, it isn't identifying individuals in the same way. But nonetheless, Vera and all solutions that should be reviewed on a regular basis for anything like that. We look at the utterances, which are the phrases that people are typing in the system on a regular basis to categorize them and kind of prune the dialogue tree or enhance it as required. So it's I think largely a problem that can be dealt with preventatively by looking at the data you're using to train models. But then there should be sort of ongoing vigilance to make sure that nothing has sort of crept into it that's undermining your goals.
Mm-hmm. And maybe one more addition to that is that because Vera is developed so much with the user in mind, as well as the service and customer aspect in mind, you can infuse a certain tone or a certain friendliness or a build pathways that are friendlier for the user to get to where they need to go, or those that stop them in their tracks and push them off somewhere else. And I think that flexibility in the conversation building, it does and it can. We should be conscious of the fact that that can induce a certain amount of bias, but having that top of mind and thinking a bit about what we would do in person versus what we want Vera to capture is something that we were thinking about in that process.
Our next question is, do you find that users are sometimes hesitant to share registrations info virtually, especially info required by funder, but not typical registration info? So maybe Marco, I'll ask you to take this one in case you've uncovered through the source of your research information around user hesitancy to share information digitally.
I think it's a great question, and there's no uniformity amongst newcomer groups. I think part of that is impacted by their previous experience with technology. So, for example, a great example is refugees who may have gone through Europe in a migration journey where technology was both a lifeline, but also used for surveillance on them, for example, or in their home countries as refugees. Surveillance technology has been used as for surveillance. So the communication and the way that the technology is presented and to build that rapport and trust becomes essential. So for example, in some cases, those clients may start using Vera after they become a client of Access. Once they've established that trust, once they understand that this is a legitimate service provider who is using my data to help me, then they may access Vera. So you have, for example, an initial in-person client who becomes more of a digital or a hybrid client, for example. And I think that's, I see Ada nodding. So when you're building something that's customer-centric, you take those things into account. Increasingly, I think we are seeing that more newcomers tend to be more mobile and digital than Canadian born, but we can't assume that that means that they necessarily trust sharing data because of how it might have been used in their own migration processes. So I think it doesn't make it an either or proposition. So, you know, technology may be part of the solution eventually, but it may not be the first interaction someone has through Vera, for example.
All right, I am mindful of time. I see there is one last question here. It's related to users incorrectly entering information related to self-assessments, professional goals, etc. Ada, could you speak quickly to this? And I'm just going to pull up the last slide of the presentation, which is a link well, it's my email address and some other helpful links, and so people can refer to that and get a copy of the deck if they'd like.
Great. Yep. So really quickly, we try to minimize and really just do the bare minimum of questions required for the assessment online, and also knowing that information shared online needs to ultimately be verified by our team who's received the information on the other end. So that having the information, having Vera doesn't negate that one-to-one conversation, that very important assessment, the employment support received in a phone call or directly with the person. But what it does is it does start that conversation off with those basic 10 set of questions that we've set up to be asked online.
I want to take this moment, these last few moments, to thank all of our presenters for sharing your insights and your knowledge and your passion for this. Thank you very much to Metropolis for offering the session. And finally, thank you to all of you who attended. Once again, to receive a copy of this presentation, please email me. My email address is there, ahomes@accessemployment.ca. Or I think any of us would be happy to reach if you reached out to us individually and for further discussion. Thank you very much and enjoy.